Good evening, good morning, good night, hello. Guys, welcome back to the Weekly Wigz. Oh, girlies, it's bloody chilly on this Friday night, 16th of Jan. We're in the depths of winter, let me tell you. You will be seeing me in this hat for probably the next 2 months. You're very welcome. It becomes my identity. I'm basically a walking hat during the winter months, and there ain't nothing else you can do about it. So get used to the look. We'll occasionally try and switch it up, maybe go a bit crazy, take it off. But anyway, guys, welcome back to the Weekly Wigz, episode 2 of series 2. Thank you very much for rejoining me, and I hope you enjoyed our little kick-off of series 2 last week. She's back in the swing of things, and yeah, hope you've had a marvellous week. What's the 411, guys? How are we all doing? Drop me some comments, drop me a DM, let's chit-chat. It is Friday evening, a cold, wintry Friday evening. I've just had a lovely little day and a half with my cute little mum and my Auntie Sue. Had a cute little family visit. They had some time off work and they came up for a little gallivant around Manchester. It was my auntie's first time visiting Manchester. So I was being like Little Miss Tour Guide for the last day or so. Just showing the sights. We had some wonderful food. I tell you what, if you are a Manchester local or you ever come to visit Manchester, one of my top recommendations for restaurants, if you like Italian or pasta, is Onda Pasta Bar. Oh, we had a sublime meal. It was so good. The guy, the chef, he's like a Michelin star trained chef, okay? But it's a chill vibe. It's not like some hoity-toity fine dining, like insanely expensive restaurant. It's actually like pretty reasonable for the quality of food. And there's sort of like little mini pasta dishes that you can like share with the table. Oh, chef's kiss. I'm still thinking about it now. So yeah, we just kind of had like a little foodie day or two. Went to little cafes, had some brunch. Just had a little walk around. It was quite chilly, to be honest. So not always the most ideal time in winter to try and be a little tourist. But you know what? It did rain. So on UK standards, it's actually quite good. But yeah, I've had a really nice little family time there. So refills the soul, fills up the energy. And now here we are. We're on to the weekend. I thought, you know what? I'm feeling a bit fruity on this Friday. Let me get my pod recorded a little bit early. So we got a lot to chat and discuss about today, as ever. You know the drill, guys. If you enjoy what you listen to, please do me a favour and like the episodes, share them on your Insta stories, anything you can do to help me get the Weekly Wigz reaching far and wide. Share it with your family, share it with your friends. If you know someone who's into podcasts and they just like a little chin wag, then please, do share my content around. I do put a bunch of clips onto my Instagram and my TikTok. All the links for those are in my bios. So today we got a couple of things. I mean, some standard admin as usual. You know, we got to just do a little run through of life, politics, pop culture, what's going on in the world. And then today's topic is actually going to be mainly focused around women's healthcare, specifically like weaved in with some of my own experiences, PCOS, weight loss. It's going to be a whole thing, so stay tuned for that. I'll get into the crux of that shortly, but for now, let's go through a little run through of our current topics. So, what is happening in the world? Okay, so this week, I mean, of course, in the world of politics, it's just hellfire every second of the day. Don't go a single day without seeing some crazy video of Donald Trump losing his mind, some awful atrocity taking place. I mean, it's quite hard to keep up, to be honest, half the time. God help these journalists, okay? I do not know how you can be a steady, stable journalist in these times, like specifically like a political journalist, because the dial turns. It turns so quickly. I do not know how they find the time to sit there and cover one story before some madness comes in from the side. So props to them, because I could not be doing that full time. I would lose my mind. It's overwhelming enough when you're just like a regular citizen taking in the news and trying to follow with what's going on. I think one of the biggest stories this week, actually, which I will have opinions on, is all around Elon Musk and the platform X, formerly known as Twitter. And there's been a lot of controversy. I mean, to be honest, the controversy has been around for quite some time, ever since that stupid man took over the platform. But it's really ramped up in this last week because I guess, obviously with the takeover of AI these days, which, little plug, head back to series 1. I did a full episode on the rise of AI and how it's kind of infiltrating our lives. But, we're all getting used to it now. Everything you use, your Google phone, your iPhone, searching things on the web, ChatGPT, like a lot of built-in AI, chatbot, techie things now, right? And Twitter's no different. By the way, I will keep referring to it as Twitter because the day they called that X was the biggest shambles ever known to man. And I just can't call it X. I can't take it seriously. So it'll always be known as Twitter in my brain, okay? So Twitter's now got an integrated AI kind of tool, and it's called Grok, Grok, Elon Musk's brilliant invention. And it's pretty regulated. It's a pretty rampant piece of technology that is causing a lot of pandemonium. And this last week or so, it's gotten into, understandably, a lot of what's the bloody word I'm trying to say? Hot fire, I was about to say there, not hot fire. What's the bloody phrase? You know what I'm trying to say? It's gotten into a lot of heat because people are able to abuse this tool to, shock, exploit women and kids. That's what happens when you have unregulated tools and a world full of parasitic, psychotic men who abuse the tools and their power. And I guess this Grok tool has been allowing that. Like, it's been enabling this technology. So we were talking a lot in the AI episode about deepfakes, right? And deepfakes is where people sort of create an image of someone that looks really realistic, but it's obviously fake, hence the word deepfake. So it's doing this thing now where, like, you can basically submit a photo to the Grok AI tool and ask it to basically undress the person. So, like, you could literally upload a photo of me, I guess, full body photo of me, and you can ask it to edit it like a flash, make it naked, undress it, and you can do that to anyone of any age. And obviously it's mainly happening to the female gender and young kids, which is just despicable, disgusting, basically a crime. Let's be real. And in kind of true fashion, Elon Musk, as the owner of this platform, should have a bigger responsibility and more recognition in stopping that type of behaviour. That's what us normal folk would be doing if we had a conscience or a brain. But of course, he doesn't give a shit because he's a weirdo. So there's been a lot of investigations, conversations all around that this last week or so. And I will say I felt semi-hopeful and somewhat thankful to see just a slither of backbone coming from Keir Starmer on the matter from the UK government, which, to be honest, I wasn't really expecting because so far Keir Starmer's record isn't going very well. But he did publicly say, like, hey, mate, we ain't fucking with that shit over here, so time to stop. So essentially, this is actually, like, really developing, and as of even, I think, yesterday, it's still kind of ongoing. There's a lot of people involved. You've got the government putting pressure on Elon Musk and X, Twitter. You've got Ofcom, which is like the regulator in the UK for sort of media and television and all online things. They're doing sort of an ongoing investigation as to whether the platform has actually broken UK laws. I think that's still ongoing, but basically, thankfully, with an actual bit of pressure, political pressure, legal pressure, Elon Musk has finally had to actually do his job, which he should have done in the first place, and has started to ban the AI tool Grok to be able to edit photos like that. So, bit of progress, slight win, and we'll take it because we need to just be, like, harder on this shit. There needs to be more of a crackdown, I think, on particularly social media giants anyway. We know how unsafe they are in so many ways. And obviously Elon Musk is just an absolute rampant lunatic. The fact that he's even in charge of such a platform is wild. And he's already making that platform so dangerous and unregulated and scary. So I foresee that continuing into the future, to be perfectly honest. But I was quite welcoming of our response for once as the UK government in trying to sort that shit out. So I would say that's kind of one of the key events that's happened this week in terms of politics. In the world of pop culture, we've had the awards season kick off. If anyone's into their movies, films, music, this time of year, like January up until about March, April, May, is what we call the award season, where you see all the big award ceremonies like the Grammys, the Oscars, the Golden Globes. I'm quite a fan of that. I've always been a follower of all things pop culture in general, but I love seeing, like, who's going to win the prize, what they're wearing. There's always something dramatic that tends to happen at an award show, like someone says something wrong, or, I mean, we all bloody remember the Will Smith slapping saga, celebrities are netters, they're all a bunch of weirdos, and it all happens on live TV. So the Golden Globes kicked us off, really. I think it was last week it was on? I think it was last week. And I think I mentioned that actually in my episode 1 that was upcoming, because I'd just gone to see Marty Supreme, which is one of the sort of Oscar-tipped films for this year. As predicted, Mr. Timothée Chalamet, he went ahead and won the Best Actor for the Marty Supreme film. So he took away the gong, as they say. And then for the actress, the prominent actress category was Jessie Buckley in Hamnet, which is very much on my list. I need to go see Hamnet. I think that's a very good film. I think it's specifically about like a story about Shakespeare. It's of like that time. I'm not 100% sure what the entire film is about, but it's got good ratings and they're winning all the acting awards, so it must be good. I was also really happy to see how much success The Adolescents has been getting. I'm sure most people have heard of this, but it was a really big hit on Netflix. I think it actually came out quite a few months ago, sometime last year. And it was one of these sort of one-shot films. They shot it all in one take, which is so impressive. If you go on YouTube and just search like the behind the scenes of how they made that, it's like so insane how they did that. And all the actors are getting all the awards, which I'm so happy about, because there's this one young guy called Owen Cooper who's like clearly having this like breakout star moment. And he was really good in it, like really young. I think he was probably only 15, 16 or something when he was acting in it. And he's getting like all the Golden Globes, all the awards. And I think he's just like a young boy from somewhere up north. Is he from Manchester, perhaps? Owen Cooper. He has definitely got like a funny little northern accent. Where's he from? Oh, he's from Warrington. Actually, it's more so, it's that's between Liverpool and Manchester. So yeah, he's a northern boy. He's just like a pretty normal young boy from that town, like first time being in a film, I think, which is pretty amazing. And then one of my favourite actors ever, Stephen Graham. Now, he's a Scouser. He's an amazing actor. He's one of my favourite actors ever. I love him in so much stuff. I always loved him in the This Is England series and films. I mean, honest God, he's just been in so much, Stephen Graham. He's an amazing actor, and he seems like such a down-to-earth guy. And I think he's one of these like actors that's been doing it for so long, but he's weirdly never had that much recognition, like in America. I think he's done like a couple of films with American stars, because he was in that, I think it was The Irishman, which is one of those is it a Martin Scorsese film, The Irishman? Hang on, testing my knowledge here. It's like a gangster film with like Robert De Niro. I love that film. It's a very long film, but it's a very good one. The Irishman. Oh, I was bloody right, Martin Scorsese. That's Irishman. He's in that, but I was surprised that he never got much recognition back then, even though he only had a supporting role. But like, he's a bloody respected actor. But for some bizarre reason, he's kind of only ever been a bit of a national treasure, or well known in the UK. But I'm glad he's had his moment. I was like, yes, Stephen, go for it. Especially just being a Scouser. We love a Scouser. So there we go. That was the Golden Globes. Next up, actually, I thought the Oscars was actually pretty soon, but I guess that's not actually till March. So next up in the awards series, we've got the Grammys, which is obviously the music awards. I did a little recap of the Grammys in one of my episodes last year because they came out with all the nominations. I'm really rooting for Gaga at the Grammys this year. I think this is her year. It's one of the first times in a while that we don't have like Beyonce and Taylor Swift, which often sweep up all the gongs. And she had obviously her Mayhem album come out last year and had like Abracadabra, which is up for, I think, Song of the Year. So I'll be really interested to see how the Grammys go. Oscars then in March, and then kind of the round off of one of the big events is the Met Gala, which isn't really, it's not an awards ceremony, but it's quite the global event, isn't it? Met Gala. It's all about fashion, darling. And I quite like watching all the Met Gala stuff. So that's in May. So yeah, we've got a couple of things coming up, award season. My song of the week that I've been listening to this week in music land is a song called Trump the Bill by Sunshine Benzie. Is that her name? She's blowing up on TikTok right now. She's a rapper. It's a really catchy song. It's one of those, like, American rap, hip hop kind of songs. Would recommend it if you're into that kind of music. She's giving attitude. It's funny with like in the rap world because she does not fit the image of what you would say is a usual rapper. She's just like this really just kind of normal looking girl. She's got long sort of strawberry blonde ginger hair. She's cool. She's just chilling. But it's weird because she sounds really similar to Nicki Minaj with like a bit of a New York accent, even though I don't think she's even from New York. But anyway, she's new and popping. Very much been listening to that song on repeat. And the first part of the song has been like my vocal stim this week. It's like, bitches be thicker than a dick. That's just been looping on my head all week. And I am also still very much on the Zara Larsson vibe. Midnight Sun, obviously a great song, but I've moved on to another song of hers from that album called Hot and Sexy, which is a very fun, pop, energetic song. And I actually feel like it would be an amazing song to work out to. And you know me, I'm always here for the high energy music. It gets me through the winter in particular. I'm just like, give me the bops. Give me the bops, give me the beats, give me the vibes. So Miss Zara Larsson and Sunshine Benzie are very much doing that for me this week. Let me know in the comments who's on your playlist. Anyone you need to put me on to? Let me bloody know. So there we go. That's my fun little roundup of current affairs, pop culture and politics. I'm sure I've probably missed like 1,000 things that has gone on this week. But you know, we only do a quick recap because obviously I want to focus on the core topic today, which is going to be around healthcare. Now, I've had this planned in my little notepad for a while to have a bit of a topic of discussion around this because it's something that I think about a lot. It's something that is part of my daily life. It's something that is lived and experienced. And it is something that I feel I hear more and more people talking about, which is a great thing. And I know so many people in my life that have suffered with certain conditions, specifically being a woman, right? And I think in this age of the constant fight against the patriarchal systems that we live in, I mean, let's be real, we've been doing that for bloody centuries, but it's still very prominent now. We're still fighting for our rights out here as women. And I think what's honestly happening is we're all just talking about it more now. Like, people have had enough. Women have had enough. It's like, girlies, we deserve to have our healthcare looked after just as much as men. And it's about time we did something about it. And a lot of this coming up for me as of late. I mean, I'll go into a little bit of background and detail with my history and my experiences with things to do with women's healthcare, but it kind of links into my personal journey of something that I'm on right now, which is linked with weight loss and hormones and all of this stuff, right? Because it all interconnects. It all interconnects. And something I feel like I want to get across today is not only the topic of, you know, the importance of understanding how unequal women's and female and male healthcare treatment is, and that's like something I'm passionate about, for sure. But I also just want to get into a little bit of discussion about the rising trend of weight loss jabs, Manjaro or Ozempic, whatever you want to call it, because I'm on my own personal journey with that and have my own experiences. So there's just a lot to discuss. So let's get into it. So on a personal note, when I was a teenager, I always used to struggle so much with a variety of things. I was always a bigger girl compared to everyone in my school or everyone in my life. I've always been the taller, bigger child. And, you know, listen, if you've been like the fat girl of the group, whatever it is you want to call yourself, you'll be able to relate to this in a world where you feel a bit othered, you feel a bit out of place, okay? And look, there's a lot we could get into on a deep level here about just childhood and traumas and all this crap. But when you are like that from a sort of young age, I think when you enter your adulthood, you become so used to a society and a world that A, treats you very different because of your body size, but B, quite frankly, rules out any other form of healthcare issue because of the fact that you're bigger. And that has really truly been my most lived experience when it comes to my personal healthcare as a woman, right? And actually specifically linked to women's healthcare, periods, PCOS, all this stuff, right? And so when I got into like teenagehood, you know, you go through your girly time. Oh, what age are you going to be when you have your first period? And you're kind of trying to figure out amongst your peers and your friends of like, oh, am I normal? Like, am I late on my period? Is there something wrong with me? Because that happens at that age, right? Anything between maybe the age of 12 to 16 for some girls, that's usually when we're starting our periods and going through puberty and all this stuff, right? And I always actually felt like I was a bit late to the game. when I was around that age, because compared to most girls in my school year, I was a bit later than them in starting my period. But I guess back then you're a little bit worried, but like as soon as it happens, you just think, oh well, okay, it doesn't matter, like I'm on my periods now. So, go through life, have semi-normal periods as you do as a teenager. I definitely used to struggle a lot with pain when I was a lot younger. Sometimes I'd have really extreme pain where I'd feel like completely sick from it, like nausea from the pain. Thankfully, that has not followed me into my adulthood, but I know every woman and girl's experience is very different. And then it was really kind of in my later teenage years that I started to experience having like dark chin hairs, like very visible facial hairs, which obviously as a girl, we're not necessarily known for having like beards, are we? Do you know what I mean? I mean, hey, I'm of the opinion, if you're a biological or non-biological female, who bloody cares? If you want a beard, you live your life, hun. I don't actually know why as a society we're so rigid in like what genders must look like. Like, I kind of actually love that there's, feminists and women out there now who are just like, fuck it, I'm gonna have really long armpit hair. I don't need to shave. Who am I doing it for? I mean, each to their own. Me personally, that's not my style, but like, I do respect that others don't follow some norm from society, But anyway, that's by the way. But for me personally, it made me feel really insecure. And I was like, oh God, what is this? Like, where does this come from? Why am I getting a man beard? I had to pluck them all the time. And it just used to plague my life for so many years. And I come to learn that it was something that was quite hereditary in my family, in my genes. And a lot of the other women older than me in my family also used to have that. So I thought, okay, well, I possessed the unlucky gene. But I think when you're a lot younger, other than trying to fix it cosmetically, you're not really paying much attention to how on earth you might actually fix that or what could be the cause of it. And kind of as standard as women's healthcare goes and you're kind of a teenager or moving into adulthood, the most natural step for any girl is usually to just go on the pill, right? And that doesn't actually really ever address anything. That is one of my biggest problems I have with healthcare in general in the UK. And maybe this is like it in other parts of the world. I can only speak from my own experiences. But I do feel like the NHS is really not proactive, which is sad and frustrating because things like facial hair, which for me, I later find out in life that that's linked to PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome. I'm going to go into a whole spiel about that in a minute, but at the time, didn't really know or understand that, right? And I just feel like if I had known that a lot earlier in life, and that was something that a doctor or a GP had been proactive about in recognising or discussing, then I probably could have resolved that a lot earlier and not felt so insecure all the time and not had to spend my entire hours plucking away in pain every day of my damn life. And so for me, the core issue really was obviously the facial hair. But then I started obviously continuing to struggle with weight, right? And look, weight as a whole has always been a big part of my life journey. I honestly do believe that you are born with certain genes that kind of determines what type of body or skeleton size you are meant to be, right? I do not think that everyone is actually supposed to be one size. I really don't believe in that. I think your body is your body. You can be tall, wide, and healthy at the same time, right? From a young age, I've always been a bigger girl. I believe that's in my genes generally, because I've come generally from a bit of a bigger bodied family. But for me, I always knew that I've always been bigger than I know I should be or want to be. I know it's unhealthy health-wise for my organs and my joints, and that's something I've always been actively trying to change a lot more in my adult life. And yeah, some of it is absolutely self-inflicted. Like, of course, when I think back to my uni days and all the drinking and all the shit food I used to eat, yes, no doubt I probably put on weight as like a young person in my 20s, right? And I wasn't exactly always the most super gym active girly throughout those years either. Some of it self-inflicted, understandable. What I then came to discover later in life is that actually a really big part of my weight issues and problems was to do with being diagnosed as a PCOS patient. And women with PCOS are often really struggling with weight. It's one of the biggest symptoms, along with facial hair or period problems and all that kind of stuff. You know me on the Weekly Wigs, we like to get a statistic out. We like to get some definitions. I'm just going to refer to some better presented sentences and stats to help contextualize where we're at here. So PCOS, that's what I'm going to really focus on specifically from my own personal experiences, because that's what I have. Now, I know there's a multitude of conditions and women's healthcare topics. I could go into a whole spiel about endometriosis. I don't know enough about that. I don't have lived experience with that to massively be able to talk about it, but I do obviously want to take a second to recognize that. Fertility, that's a whole other conversation. We could probably honestly do a full episode on that too. But I'm going to focus on the angle of PCOS and how that for me has linked in to weight issues and then how that looks in the setting of a healthcare system, right? So polycystic ovary syndrome is the name, PCOS for short. It's a common and complex endocrine? Am I literally saying that right? Endocrine? Bit of a weird word, that. Anyway, it's just a fancy medical term for hormone disorder, whereby the polycystic ovaries, which obviously is in our female anatomy, are one of an array of possible symptoms caused by an underlying hormone imbalance. You're going to probably hear the word hormone a lot in this episode. Get your shots out and take one every time I say the word hormones. So PCOS was first discovered, quote unquote, in 1935 by doctors Stein and Leventhal. So for many years it was known as the Stein-Leventhal syndrome. Oh, I actually never knew that. There we go, we're all learning. The term polycystic ovaries describes ovaries that contain many small cysts, about twice as many as in normal ovaries, usually no bigger than about 8 millimeters, located just below the surface of the ovaries. The cysts in polycystic ovaries are not true cysts. They are not full of liquid and they do not get bigger or burst. They do not require surgical removal and do not lead to ovarian cancer. They are usually follicles that have not matured to be ovulated, which is why the name of the condition is confusing. Well, tell you what, I'm learning a lot as we go on here, and that's probably going to happen throughout the episode. It was originally thought that these follicular cysts caused the condition, but we now know that they are one of the symptoms, and not everyone will get them. Due to the confusion with the name of the condition, both with healthcare professionals and the general public, there are now discussions around the potential for changing the name. Who knew? By the way, I'm reading all of this from a website called Verity, and Verity is like a PCOS charity in the UK, so just for a bit of context there. This process of changing the name is an international process in which Verity is playing an integral role in the consultation and discussion around any changes. Polycystic ovaries are very common, affecting around 1 in 5. Polycystic ovary syndrome is also very common, affecting 1 in 8 women and people with PCOS, although this can vary from country to country. I know so many people in my life who have PCOS. It is a lot more common than people realise. And it's really not spoken about unless it's spoken about within your communities or with women that you know have it. And I think that was something that I really struggled with growing up, because obviously for many years, like I said, I always struggled with my weight. I started getting this bloody facial hair, and I just never really understood or knew what it was, where it came from. I didn't know anything about it. Didn't know a single thing other than what you could generally Google, right? But obviously, you're really expecting to know those answers in detail from a health professional. And I never got that, like, in any clarity forever. I mean, 1 in 8 women in the UK, that is a really quite high figure. And it is very shocking to me how poorly it is diagnosed and talked about. I don't think it's a complete shock to most women who will be listening to this to know that women's healthcare is very much overlooked, right? I mean, welcome to a patriarchal world that we live in, have done for a long time, particularly in the UK, still a lot of things run by men, okay? This is not a huge surprise that these discussions have not been happening from the start of time, right? I did find some interesting stats online, so I'm going to read through some of those now. From 2013 to 2023, NHS wait times for women's health services have significantly increased. In 2013, only 4.6% of women waited more than 18 weeks for treatment, and by 2023, that number had surged to nearly 50%. That is ridiculous in the span of 10 years. Bloody hell. As a result, a growing backlog is leaving many women in unnecessary pain and disability for months before they can receive the care they need. Postnatal conditions and pelvic pain conditions affect millions of women, yet services for these conditions are stretched thin. The department has experienced the worst increase in waiting times among NHS specialties in recent years. By 2021, the gynecology waiting list across the UK had grown to 570,000 women. Wow, that's ridiculous. The largest percentage increase of all elective specialties. In England, the number of women waiting over a year for gynecological care surged from just 66 before the pandemic to nearly 25,000, by early 2022. That's wild. Notably, delays in care can cause pelvic health conditions to worsen, making them more difficult to treat. And untreated endometriosis or prolapse can worsen over time, significantly impacting quality of life and in some cases fertility. A key factor behind gaps in care is the historical tendency to downplay women's pelvic health concerns. Oh my God, isn't that just the absolute truth? Because this is the point, right? I feel like whether you have pelvic pain, whether it's period pain, whatever it may be, right? There is just this societal thing that happens. And I guarantee we've all experienced it once in our life, right? Where someone, some GP somewhere, whether it's a male doctor, and honestly, sometimes female doctors, I think it's just this weird bias thing that happens, right? And they really think that you're just being dramatic. And I truly believe that is ingrained in our attitudes to women in general, right? We hear those phrases like, oh, you're just on your period. We use that as like an insult against people. We think women are hysterical. Oh, they just got so much mania, hysteria. Like, we know that's such a trope that is used against women and has been since the bloody beginning of time. And it genuinely does seep into the healthcare world, without a doubt. I've heard stories of people who talk about going to doctors in like their moments of need, and they will literally say like point blank to them like, oh, do you think you just like overreacting a bit? And it's like, oh my God, you can't say that. It's crazy. And you know what's the most shocking thing I read actually? That there's another page here called the Women's Organisation, which I also have a couple of facts to read out. And I was reading through this earlier on. And one thing to actually recognise is not only obviously do women often get very sidelined in many areas, but actually women of colour. It's really quite shocking how disparaging it is. For example, the number of women who have died during pregnancy is the highest in 20 years, according to recent research, with an average of 13.41 deaths per 100,000 pregnancies. And black women are 4 times more likely to die during pregnancy and childbirth. And I think you really have to sit there and do a bit more research and deep dive into why that is, right? And generally what you will find just on a surface level, I mean, it's a combination of factors, of course, but I think we'd be wrong to say that there's not some kind of systemic bias or racism type impact that causes such a statistic, you know, especially in the UK, to be quite frank. And I think it is this bias and these like sort of microaggressions, which is something that we really have to get rid of, right, in the healthcare system. And again, going back to just my personal experiences, not talking about skin colour or anything like that, but even just talking about size, like the bias and this belief that just because you are a bigger person, that automatically means you are lazy, you're unhealthy, you're not doing anything to help yourself. Like, that is how I have been made to feel all my life, quite frankly. And I feel like, unfortunately, a lot of NHS doctors and the GPs, I don't know whether it's just the way they're trained or whether it's the code of practice in their departments, but I always feel like I could have a broken leg, I could have a chipped nail. Like, honest to God, it wouldn't matter what the health condition is. The first thing they would say is, have you tried losing weight? And it is so beyond insulting because it's like, look, we understand and we know with a bit of common sense that yes, being overweight or being obese of course contributes to factors in multiple health conditions, right? That's not rocket science, okay? But trying to act like that's the one and only sole cause or reason to anything is so beyond ridiculous, and there's so many millions of factors to consider with any type of healthcare, and especially female healthcare, right? And I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone through experiences where I feel like I am fully dismissed just because of my size. And it's wrong, because the reality is you could have a woman who is very thin, very skinny, or a woman who is very big and very round. And they can both have the same health conditions and be struggling with the exact same symptoms, especially in PCOS. There are women of all shapes and sizes who struggle with PCOS. And I know that often weight is linked to symptoms, right? And I'm not saying that that's not true, but like, it isn't the only thing. It absolutely is not. And to be quite frank, there's far more research that needs to be done, in particular with PCOS, because that is this standardized answer about everything. And also, it is the same with the pill. So many doctors just think the answer to everything is just go on the pill, just go on the pill. And while that may work for some people, great, but that's not the reality for everyone. And I just get really frustrated at those lived experiences and that people still to this day continue to receive that type of treatment when we're not being proactive early on in life to figure out what things could be going on. We're not taking people seriously. We have far too much bias. And we're not actually looking into like the multitude combination of things that could be causing something for someone. And I think we really fail women on that part. And it makes me kind of mad. I mean, going back to this women's organisation page with all these different stats, it literally says here, 80% of women feel that medical professions haven't listened to them or believed them. That is absolutely a fact. And I mean, just look at this one, right? Erectile dysfunction, which affects 19% of men, is studied in research 5 times more than PMS, which affects 90% of women. I mean, does that not just summarise the whole thing for you? You know, the entire world, majority of the population, is not being affected by your dodgy penis, okay? Whereas pretty much most of the population of women are all really suffering out here every month of their damn life with PMS, which is premenstrual syndrome, myself included. Oh my God, I tell you what, my PMS has absolutely gotten way worse since becoming an adult, right? I was mentioning earlier on just about periods and stuff and how when I was a little bit younger, I definitely used to suffer a little bit more like on my actual period weeks with sickness and obviously your general cramps. And then that side of it did kind of disappear for me as an adult, which, you know, touch wood, I'm thankful for because that's also not fun. But PMS is basically like, for the men out there who I hope you're listening and we can educate you just a tad. There is usually a 2-week period before a woman actually comes on her period called like the premenstrual ovulation time, right? And this is where a woman often experiences a variety of symptoms that just makes them feel like shit. And they're often not alleviated until you actually come on your period. And even then, for some women, even when they come on their period, they are then greeted with another cohort of symptoms which make them feel like shit, right? So I just need you to understand that out of an entire month, most of us women, we have 3 shit weeks and 1 good one. That's literally honestly how it goes. We have the period, and it's not fun. Some people struggle with pain, some people don't. But either way, it's not really fun. We have 1 week straight after our period where our hormone levels go, woo! Let's give you some life back, girl. Go live your life. Have the best week. And then that week comes to a very sharp end because you then re-enter the 2-week cycle of ovulation and PMS symptoms. And oh my God, I don't know if it's because I'm just more aware of this as I'm aging and I've become more attuned with my cycle, but my PMS, I am a raging PMS girl. Oh my God, my tiredness levels go through the roof. I have to nap so much. I am so lethargic. I am so moody. Oh my God, my mood swings. I become so irritable. I hate everyone and everything. And I actually get like a lot of pain. Like they call it like ovulation pain, where you basically can actually literally feel like your bloody ovaries rupturing, releasing the eggs essentially. And it like switches sides. So it's one side each month. Takes it in turns, so generous. And it's honestly just a very miserable existence. And you know, I would love to know, girlies, if you're listening, just tell me in the comments, like, do you struggle with PMS? Do you have a certain set of symptoms that ruin your life for that period of time? Hey, if you're one of the lucky ones and you don't be getting any of that shit, then congrats to you. There's also another condition, which I've learned about a bit later in life, called PMDD, which is basically like an extreme version of PMS, which focuses a lot more on struggles around your mental health. Like women can get really bad depression around all of the other symptoms too. So that's a much more severe case. So it's pretty rough out here. We're often in a lot of pain. For a variety of reasons. And so you can understand how it is quite a slap in the face when you find out, you know, that we're spending 5 times more time and money studying erectile dysfunction over things like PMS, you know? Another fact, it takes the average sufferer 8 years to be diagnosed with endometriosis. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Menopause costs the UK economy £10 billion and heavy painful periods cost £531 million in sick days. Now, I tell you one thing I really think should be a thing in this country, and it is in other parts of Europe. I really genuinely think that women should be given like menstrual leave. Is it called that? It's basically a bit like having sick days, but specific to women's health issues. Because, oh my God, I know people who have endometriosis and it is debilitating. It is one of the worst things that a woman can live with. You are just, some women are bedbound. Some women have to go through countless operations for endometriosis because it causes so much physical pain. So I just feel like if workplaces had women's backs a little bit more and you never felt worried about losing your job because you're taking so many sick days, like there should definitely be, I think, a contingency. And I would love to see a world, especially in the UK one day, where we welcome the idea of like extra menstrual leave for women. Big advocate of that. So there we go. That's just a little running through, obviously, of some of the stats and some of the things that we're dealing with as women in the healthcare industry. And I just think we've got a really, really long way to go. Now, the government do have this thing called the Women's Health Strategy. I think this is specifically for England. I don't know if this applies to Wales or Scotland or other parts, but they do have a developing health strategy apparently in place that's supposed to address these concerns. But I'll be quite honest, I haven't seen a lot of improvement or funding coming from that just yet. So I really hope we see a future for our young girls. Like I think of my niece who's coming into the world. She's 2 years old. I hope she gets to live a life where she doesn't have to go through so many struggles and answers and questions to find out about her own health. I hope she isn't pushed to the side and tracked like a common criminal because you dared to book an appointment and speak to a GP. Like, it makes me really quite sad how much faff, to be honest, us women have got to go through to get to a basic answer. And it is a basic answer. What you often find is if you go to the right professionals, you can usually get some semi-decent treatment. Now, with me personally on my journey, obviously I went back earlier on just talking about growing up and the chin hairs and the weight. And to be perfectly honest, for many years of my life, I think I just accepted it because of what society and bias was putting on me and how I always felt when it came to any GP appointments about anything health related. I always kind of internally just felt like, well, it's my own fault. I'm just overweight, so that's what the cause of everything is. When in fact, it wasn't. And it wasn't until I think I was in... What year was this? It was about 2020, actually. It was just before the pandemic. I think I really got to a point where I was actually so sick of always having to deal with the chin hair and obviously still the struggle of weight. Just years and years and years of it going on now. And I was, I've always been on 1,000 bloody health kicks and calorie counting and going to the gym and trying all sorts of things and just not getting any success no matter what I did. And then I learned that I had this thing called a goiter. I never even knew what this was before getting one. Let me give you a definition. A goiter, which is a really ugly word. They could have called it something nicer. A goiter is a swelling at the front of the neck caused by an enlarged thyroid gland. So your thyroid gland is like this sort of butterfly-shaped gland that sits in your neck, which plays a vital role in like regulating your body's metabolism. It assists with things like your energy, your growth, your temperature, controlling how fast your body like uses energy, basically. And so an enlarged thyroid, aka a goiter, it can stem from essentially having a bit of a dodgy thyroid, right? And there's a multitude of things that can lead to it. You can have autoimmune diseases that cause it, inflammation, issues with your metabolism, deficiencies. To be honest, I never really got a full clear answer as to what actually caused my goiter. Never really got to the bottom of that. I think it was just generally assumed that like clearly something's out of balance with my thyroid. And I think I was always diagnosed as, they call it like borderline hyperthyroidism or something. God, there's so many different conditions that you learn about as a woman and when you get older. And by the way, sorry, this isn't actually unique to women. Like a man can also get hyperthyroidism, but I think it is much more common in women. You can have either an underactive or an overactive thyroid. And it gives you a multitude of symptoms similar to the ones that I was experiencing. And obviously, if things aren't going too right, it can then obviously create this goiter, which is not really like a comfortable, livable situation because it's literally like a lump on your neck. And it grows. It's a bit like a cyst, right? And I started to get that. And I think, honestly, it probably existed for many years prior and I never even knew. Because with goiters, they tend to start quite small and they can just be in there not doing anything or causing you any issues. but then over time they can sometimes grow. So it was getting to a point for me where I could start feeling like this lump in my throat, and it was actually sort of pressing on my throat, like I was actually struggling to swallow a bit when I was eating food, and that's obviously the sign that you need to get that checked out. So this was the start of a really long journey for me through endless GP appointments. I was at the end of my tether around this time. Up until this point, I'd obviously been going to the doctors, even prior to them diagnosing the goiter, right, and that becoming a thing. I was having the continued issues with the facial hair, problems with weight gain all the time. And also, one thing that started happening more is I just started becoming more aware of the fatigue and the tiredness I kept feeling. So I was always searching for answers, always convinced that like something's not right. I think I did a bunch of thyroid tests, and the NHS is quite annoying in how they test your blood for these things, right? They've got a certain range that you have to meet in a certain criteria. But like the reality is that you can be so low down on this range of scale, and that's why they would call me borderline. But because it's like not quite underneath, and they won't really do anything about it, which I find a bit bizarre. So in their eyes, oh, it's a normal result. When you know, in fact, that it is not normal because you can feel the symptoms and you're far, far low down on the scale. Because if I did this test and the digit was 1 under, then I would officially be out of the scale. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that goes on in the NHS, in the blood testing department. And after a while, I got so sick of never getting anywhere with just a generic GP that I decided, and to be fair, shout out to my mum for this, because she's the one who really advocated for me to do this. And I'll be honest, when I was younger, I don't think I even realised that this was something you could do for yourself. So top tip, if you ever go into your standard GP practice and you're asking questions about X, Y, and Z, and maybe you're not getting very far, you can in fact ask them to refer you to a specialist unit. Like, they're often situated in hospitals, but they are far more expertise in the answers you're looking for. So that's exactly what I did after going round in circles. And I went to go see an endocrinology specialist who, again, specialises in all sort of hormone things like thyroids, right? Long story short, doing that whole process, after multiple appointments to hospitals, endless blood tests, I finally got a diagnosis of not only the goiter and the thyroid problem, but PCOS. I thought, well, I've been thinking for a while it was PCOS or my thyroid or something, because all the symptoms match. But the fact that it had to take that many steps for me to get to that point, I think is ridiculous. And again, that is absolutely representative as to what people are still experiencing to this day, right? There are so many women and people who get diagnosed a lot later in life because things aren't proactively checked, because they don't know what that may be, because there's not enough education, I don't think. There's not enough conversations and there's not enough education for young girls. I mean, God, you think back to your experiences in school, certainly mine, when you have to do your sex ed classes with a science teacher. One singular class is what I received. One sad little class which showed you a really sad little video. And this was the days of VHS tapes. A VHS tape of just some like film that was probably made in the 80s of like, this is sex. This is a boy. This is a girl. Make sure you use a condom. and then the science teacher demonstrating how to put a condom on a banana. That's literally was the extent of my sex education. And then unique to that, the girlie's got a tiny little, probably lesson in periods, but not really. It was just, women get periods and you'll bleed. And this is how you sort it. And then they send us off with a little bag with a pad and a tampon in it. Goodbye. See you never. Like, that is your education in school, which I think is appalling. I would be interested to know what that looks like in this current day and age. And look, I know that obviously family and parents and education could come from that too. But like, depending on what your family setup is, what your relationships may be, that isn't always going to be the reality for a lot of people, you know? I mean, I have memories of my mum being pretty cool about just telling me, obviously, to prepare for a potential period and like, if something happens, then don't worry. We'll be prepared, we'll sort it out. Fun fact, I actually came on my period for the first time when I was at a restaurant in Birmingham. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It's such a strange feeling when you come on your period as a teenager for the first time. You're like, oh, this is it. I'm a real woman. Oh, anyway, obviously no conversations are taking place in your young life about symptoms, about potential health risks and concerns. Like, I think it's sad that we never got to learn about that or experience that, because I think that's what makes a difference, And you start to ingrain that in society and you have conversations. Like, also, we need to normalise sharing this with boys too, because I'm sorry, why are we having gendered sex education classes? That's how it was for me in school. You had to be separate to the boys and the boys got their... I really believe that you should just have a class mixed gender and you can all learn about each other's things. Surely that's more educational. I don't know if that's what they do now, but I'm a big proponent of that. And so this brings me on. So, I've been through all these years now of questions, symptoms, what do we do? We've gone to the specialist finally. I have a diagnosis of PCOS. And honestly, even getting that diagnosis was a miracle in itself. But I'm going to be really honest with you. In those years following, which is it's been like 5-6 years since then, right? I went on to have an operation to remove the half my thyroid. You might be able to loosely make out here. I'm showing on the video. I've got like a scar here. It doesn't really look like a scar because it kind of folds into my skin. But I just want to say I looked like Frankenstein when I had that operation. I think that was truly one of the worst operations I've ever had to go through. In my lifetime, I've had 2 operations. One was when I was about 5 or something and I had appendicitis. Not that I remember all that much. And then in 2020, when I was, God, how old was I then? Like 27 or something. I had half my thyroid removed. Oh, I was a mess. I looked like Frankenstein. I had basically my bloody neck sliced open and I was recovering for quite a few weeks. But if I'm being quite honest, in the years that followed, I still have not fully managed to figure out symptoms, how to manage PCOS, weight, all of it. And the only thing that has literally helped me in recent times, when I have to give a shout out and a plug to this 2-part series that I watched on the Diary of a CEO podcast with Steve Bartlett. I know he's in a bit of hot water as of late, but just stick with me. He did this roundtable discussion with these 4 health experts, and it was this amazing debate all about women's healthcare, a lot of science facts, a lot of background, a lot of tips. It was so educational, and I was flabbergasted watching it. I was like, I have never in my life learned so much about these conditions that affect me and affect other women and how many of them originate and of all the different symptoms and all the things we can actually do to help ourselves. And they were all very different things than what I've ever heard from a GP or a healthcare professional. I will say it was transforming. I would really, really recommend, if you are a woman and you've suffered with any of these symptoms, or you're actively battling PCOS or endo and you're just really feeling lost and misunderstood and confused, start there. Maybe I'll link it in the bio for you to go watch, because I was just blown away when I watched that episode. I literally learned more in my 32 years of life listening to those women talk about stuff than I ever have. And when it comes specifically to the weight loss stuff, for me, the first thing that has ever worked for me in my entire life is using Mounjaro, which everyone's talking about, their weight loss jabs. I know it's a bit of a talking conversation, is it? And I feel like a lot of people have got their opinions on it. But for me, it has been revolutionary. And look, it is still a very long, ongoing journey. It's not just something that changes you overnight. It still comes with hard work and effort and exercise and calories and all this stuff, right? But the fact I have been doing that for so many years, most of my life, right? And I used to find it so disheartening and frustrating, putting all this effort in, exerting myself, honestly probably restricting myself in some ways and stopping eating certain food groups. I went through a whole process on the NHS, like a weight loss management service, right? And I followed all their tips and they treat me as if I was like a type 1 diabetic patient, which, just for the reference, I'm not diabetic. And they were like, no carbs, no this. Like, really very extreme diet, which I personally really don't agree with. I'm not a fan of fad diets at all. I think they're really short-lived. I'm not saying you can't get success from them, but I don't think they are for longevity. I really don't. And if I'm being honest, I don't think they're healthy for you. I think it's so important that you have to fill your body with nutrition of all groups. And the way that we label carbs as such an enemy I think is quite like mentally damaging. But anyway, that's probably for a whole other conversation. But I followed these dietitian steps and none of it worked. Absolutely none of it worked. No exercise regime that I ever did. I mean, I got like a slight bit of success just pre-pandemic. But the sad thing is that the only reason I was getting a little bit of result back then is because I was literally eating rice, chicken and vegetables every lunchtime in work. And it was so depressing. And I hated my life. And I had no variety, and I was so much more restrictive, and I really just don't think that's a way to live in general anyway. So I've obviously gone through a multitude of options here, right, and I'm just getting sick of it. And weirdly enough, when I started doing this weight loss scheme thing, and this was, again, back in like the pandemic days, they had mentioned to me back then about the potential of being referred on for some form of like weight loss injection thing. And to be perfectly honest, at the time, I felt really against that. I think I just had this pride thing of like, no, I want to do it naturally. There's nothing wrong with me because I've been made to believe that for so many years that like I have to lose the weight myself. I'm just not doing enough and blah, blah, blah. And still not really having any understanding still at that time about my PCOS diagnosis and how to treat it and all the rest of it, right? And so I was really reluctant to touch any form of injection or anything like that, right? And to be honest, this was honestly during a time where it wasn't very popular. It wasn't talked about like it is today. And of course, in the last few years, we've just had this big rise, haven't we, in everyone using it, mainly privately. I think weirdly a lot of that has kind of been influenced from the Hollywood world and the fact that lots of celebrities kind of use it now. I mean, I actually do think I could honestly do a separate episode and maybe like potentially have like a discussion with people who also use Mounjaro or weight loss injections, because there's so much to get into on that topic, right? So I won't do a full deep dive on that, but it's definitely become more of a normalized thing now, right? For some people, arguably, do they need it? I don't know. But anyway, that's by the by. But I swear on my life, it is the first thing that has ever genuinely assisted me in being able to successfully lose some weight, right? And it's a very slow progress for me. I always think no matter what I do, I just happen to be biologically someone who has a gene where it takes me a really long time to lose weight. I think my metabolism is shit. I definitely think there's probably more going on that I don't know about. I'm convinced that I've still got some situations going on with like my thyroid or something, but that's for another bloody day. But the fact that this medication has finally started to help me see results is just transforming. And I know the more I continue on it, the more consistent it will be, right? But it's wild to me how inaccessible it still is on the NHS. I mean, look, I know a lot of the NHS things in the UK are always going to be around money. We all know this, right? Being UK residents. For anyone who may not be from the UK who is listening, just understand that this is a very common topic of conversation, right? We're unfortunately a very underfunded country for the last few years because of the governments in charge, something called austerity and cutting a lot of public funds. The national health system, which we all pay tax into to try and fund, is just in a bit of a bad way. And unfortunately, we do not have the resources for a lot of things, as was demonstrated in the waiting list stats and how long people are waiting for healthcare. Not just female healthcare, but everything, right? And the Mounjaro access and that medication. Like, the frustrating thing for me is that I've had multiple conversations with doctors and even my new GPs since moving up to Manchester, where it's like, I am a candidate and a valid person to receive that on the NHS. Like, they've categorically said that. But because the funding just isn't there and the supply is limited, I don't fall under a severe enough category just yet to be able to get it for free on prescription. So for now, we're having to fund it privately, which is so... Oh, don't even start me on that, girl. The price of Mounjaro is sickening. It is actually sickening, but pardon the pen. It used to be I mean, it was still quite expensive before, but it was doable. And then bloody Trump rocked in and ruined our lives. And this whole tariff war shit, it caused a big problem. And then the manufacturers upped the price so much. And now it's really very unaffordable. And I'm not going to be able to go on much longer using it at the cost of it, which is really quite frustrating. But there are some alternatives of similar medications which are cheaper. So for my personal journey, that's what it's going to look like. But I really wish that this stuff was made more accessible to people who genuinely need it, who have health conditions that cause it, you know? So many women with PCOS massively struggle with their weight because of what the condition does to you. And it's just like this vicious cycle of your body like working against you. And the great thing about Manjaro is like the most common thing you'll obviously hear is that like, oh, it just suppresses your appetite and like you just don't eat. So that's why you lose the weight. And it's not necessarily like that. Like, yes, it does make you fuller for longer and it helps you with portion control, which is obviously a struggle for a lot of people who have weight issues, and definitely myself included. But what it also does is it like mimics certain hormones that also contributes to how like your body uses insulin and helps to like lower your blood sugar. So it's a lot more than just like, oh, I just feel full and I don't eat anything. No, it's doing a lot of things at once, which is why I think for me, it's personally been one of the biggest successes in like treatment for what I've always struggled with. I can't believe it's taken this long to get to this point, you know, and we're still on the journey, like I said, but I just really hope we see a world where not only, you know, weight loss and that kind of stuff gets more serious look at, but women's healthcare. I'm so passionate about all things feminism, obviously, and equality for women. But I just think healthcare in particular is a real shambles and we have so much further to go. We need to see a world where women's healthcare is taken more seriously, where more funding and time is put into the research, and we're not all having to wait around and getting diagnosed way later in life and suffering because of it. I think what you often find, and what I've personally found, is when you start to learn about these conditions or whether you've been diagnosed potentially with something, is that you have to just do a lot of trial and error and your own research. I mean, I will say I've always found finding sort of online PCOS communities to be very helpful in my initial journey of learning about it. And I found out like, oh, there's actually millions of women who all suffer. We're all in it together. And that definitely makes you feel a lot less alone in the struggle. I mean, if I'm being honest, the real honest truth, I think, and the reality for a lot of people in this country is in order to actually treat a lot of the symptoms, you have to go privately. You have to pay for things. Like the chin hair, for example, right? Still get a little bit of it today. But the only reason that is now improved for me is because I paid to get laser hair removal. Again, not available on the NHS. You can't get that for free. You gotta pay privately for this stuff. You have to go and take your own measures to fix the symptoms. You obviously have to try and do as much as you can in your personal lifestyle, in your diet, lower your stress, get better sleep. Those are obviously all actions we can do for free. But then for someone like me, like I actually need medical intervention and help when it comes to Manjaro and weight loss jabs to assist me in trying to lower my weight, which supposedly is what I'm always told will lower the PCOS symptoms. So it's just a real cycle of having to learn about this stuff by yourself, mixed with your own research, trying to listen to podcasts, finding communities. And you know what? I just want to actually say, I know I'm kind of slagging off the NHS and all these healthcare professionals. I have no doubt that there are some brilliant professionals and experts out there. I mean, to be fair, that was clearly demonstrated in that Diary of a CEO episode I referenced. Like, I think these women and men in healthcare settings do exist. I'm sure there are some fantastically hardworking people who really dedicate the time and care about these issues. But I just think on the wider picture, it needs to be infiltrated into earlier steps, not just your specialists. I do believe that GP practices and lower level healthcare assistants, or whatever we're calling each other, you need to have more basic knowledge. We have to stop the bias. We have to stop dismissing things just because of weight. Like that to me is one of the core issues as to why we all struggle so much, alongside lack of funding, etc., etc. So anyway, God, I feel like I've rambled enough there. I'm really glad I got into that topic because it's something that I've been wanting to chat about for a while. So if any of you out there have ever experienced your own journey, whether it's endometriosis, PCOS, and hey, I'm going to open this up to the men too. It doesn't necessarily have to be obviously about the topics I was discussing, but even just on a basic level of waiting lists, healthcare, like, have you had your own experiences? Do you find as a man that you ever had to experience that barrier in your life? Like if you were having a real honest conversation with yourself and you were comparing your lived experiences to perhaps a woman in your life, can you recognise the difference there? Chat to me in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. And I definitely would like to explore it a lot more in the future. I for sure think I could do a full deep dive episode on the use of Manjaro, the trends, the conversation, like culture around that. I think there's a lot of stigma and a lot of shame around it, which I find quite frustrating. I don't have anyone judgmental in my life, to be fair. And I know lots of people in my life that have used similar medication. But I do think as a society, we haven't quite reached the level yet where we've normalised it. We're still judging people for it, and that's a fact. But yeah, anyway, thanks so much for joining me. I think this is a little bit of a longer episode today, but we had a lot to dive into. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your weekend, or whenever you may be listening to this. And I will catch you on the next one, honeys. Take care.